Great. Right. I will kickstart our session today. So good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Sally Fletcher, Head of Online Events for SSON. I'm delighted to be hosting this session today on the significant growth in a pandemic, how Zoom shared services teams in Manila adapted to the company's meteoric rise. So something that I've been really looking forward to this webinar, and I do a lot of webinars. So to say that means it's must be something really special. I can't wait to hear what you guys have got to say. So just a little bit of quick housekeeping before we get started. All of our speakers are here live, so really make the most of the fact that they're here live and get your questions into the chat function. We've reserved some time at the end of the presentation for Q&A, so we'll make sure that we get to your questions. They've also been really kind to provide the slides post-event, so don't worry too much. You'll be able to have a copy of those slides once the session's finished. So who are our speakers today? We've got not one, not two, but three fantastic speakers for you. Our first speaker is Lara. She's the Philippines country manager for Zoom. A strong believer of growth mindset and continuous learning culture as she develops people and organizations. In Zoom, Lara enables international expansion and is responsible for successfully building Zoom's 24/5 shared service operations in Manila during her first 6 months of the global pandemic. So it was a pretty tough job by the sound of it, and you're going to hear a lot more about that during the next hour. She is joined by John Chess. John is a managing director for KMC Solutions USA. He started as the founder and former CEO of Medical. They are a BPO incorporated in the Philippines. However, nowadays he is a CEO of KMC USA, fulfilling his vision of offering his expertise, knowledge, and vast industry contacts to US-based enterprises desiring to establish their own GIC or shared service center in the Philippines. And finally, last but not least, we have Thomas Cragg. Thomas is the Vice President for Sales for KMC Solutions. He brings 15 years of experience in scaling up high-performing teams in the Philippines. Tom joined KMC as their Vice President for Sales and has been a driving force in the company's growth to become the largest flexible office space provider in the Philippines. And you can see a couple of their images of offices behind them. Certainly looks very nice. Tom's operational background and consultative approach allows KMC to develop value-added services around recruitment, staffing, and managed service solutions, allowing clients to leverage KMC's employer branding to attract and retain the best possible talent for their remote teams. So hopefully I've embarrassed them sufficiently with that introduction. I'm going to hand over to John to lead us in our presentation today. Over to you.
Thank you for those introductions, Sally, and thanks to you and the entire SSON team for coordinating the webinar today. As we all know, the topic is significant growth during a pandemic, and we'd like to start off the webinar with a quick poll. We'd like to know why you decided to join our webinar today. So if you could please look at the 5 responses and pick the response that most closely aligns with your reason for joining today. And we will share that with the group here in about 10 or so seconds.
We usually ask our speakers to sing while the poll's going on, so if you wouldn't mind.
No singing today.
I nominate Tom.
Okay, let's see. Maybe we can close that poll here and let's see what the results are. Oh, well, just as we expected. I think by far, folks are very interested in understanding how Zoom has grown while facing the challenges of the Corona pandemic. So we'll certainly keep that in mind as we get to the Q&A portion of this session. Thank you. Well, let me set the stage for our discussion today. Back in 2019, Zoom's management team decided to establish their own global shared service center for Southeast Asia in Manila. They had some needs that they needed to focus on. They were looking for a flexible partner who could quickly meet aggressive hiring targets, interview and onboard experienced staff, and provide a long-term, flexible, high-tech office solution. So together with KMC, who was selected as a partner in this endeavor, at the end of 2019, we began our planning for this expansion for Zoom. We came into 2020 after the holidays, and we're looking forward to implementing our plan. And we all know what happened at that point. We were hit worldwide with the corona pandemic. It affected our personal lives and our operational business lives tremendously, and we were forced to adapt. Luckily, we've got Lara Tang, who's going to share with you a bit later on in the presentation some of the details with how Zoom was able to handle those challenges. But before we get there, I'd like to share with you a little bit about who KMC is and what we do. KMC is the first and largest shared services facilitator in the Philippines. Our organization supports over 15,000 workstations in 23 locations throughout the Philippines. KMC has 1,800 plus internal employees who are specialists in what they do, from our talent acquisition team, HR benefits, payroll, our Never Go Down IT infrastructure support group, facilities managers, concierges in our facilities, and project managers. Our team is dedicated to helping our clients establish the best global services operation that they possibly can in the Philippines. A little bit about our model, if you could switch to the next slide, please. We are located, as I said, in 23 different facilities throughout the Philippines. And as you can see from this map, most of our facilities are located in the Metro Manila area. And obviously, this is where most of the talent resides, so that's where most of our facilities are located. But we have been requested by multiple clients to set up operations in more provincial areas. So you can see from the map, we've got approximately 1,600 seats in places like Cebu, Iloilo, and Clark. And this is primarily at the request of our clients for disaster recovery and business continuity purposes. But most of our infrastructure and our actual headquarters is located in the Metro Manila area. Next, I'd like to touch a bit upon the differences with our model. I think most of us understand intimately what the third-party BPO outsourcing model entails. This has been the most prolific offshoring model that has been engaged with by many, many international companies for offshore operations over the last 20 years. So I won't go into detail much on that, but suffice it to say that very early on, many years ago, companies like American Express, JP Morgan, Optum, Wells Fargo, all of those companies made a significant commitment to establish their own operations in the Philippines. A lot of those companies made a significant investment in infrastructure so that they could support their remote workforce. And that's exactly what KMC provides. We provide that infrastructure that allow our clients to remotely and effectively manage their workforce. So how do we differ from the traditional BPO model? Well, basically, we eliminate a management layer. So for example, with a traditional BPO model, usually a client's management team interacts with the BPO's management team, and things filter down to the actual operational group. And a lot can get lost in that translation. With our model, we allow our clients to directly manage their work group. They don't have to worry about any of the infrastructure components, payroll, benefits management, facilities, IT infrastructure. All of that is handled by our specialized workforce. So the clients can focus directly on the output of their teams, the productivity and the quality that they demand in order to properly do their jobs. So that's a key difference, as well as our model. We are a fee-for-service organization. So we don't mark up the salaries one bit for the staff that our clients employ. Everything is transparent in our model. So KMC charges fees for all of the services, which makes it much easier for our clients to manage budgets and to know exactly what their costs are going to be as they deploy and expand their operations. We've got a couple of variations of this model. We've got a model where KMC can be the employer of record for the staff that our clients hire, as well as our legal team can incorporate an entity in the Philippines, and at any point in time, our clients can transition that workforce, their workforce, over to their own entity. So either way, we can still provide the support required for an effective operation. And if we go to the next slide, we can see what really are the benefits of this model. I've already touched on the fact that there is direct client control of the workforce. We also believe that this is a superior model for attracting and retaining the top critical workforce talent available in the industry. We found that it's more prestigious and it more positively affects attrition rates when the workforce is working directly for an organization, an international organization who's made the commitment to establish operations directly in the Philippines, as opposed to working for a large multinational BPO and support that BPO's clients abroad. So it's definitely a more prestigious workplace environment, and we see that heavily impacts the attrition numbers in this model. Also, another key factor to consider, many of our clients are in the insurance, healthcare, or financial services industry, and they are subject to incredible, in the US, state or federal regulatory bodies and are very concerned with managing their regulatory compliance and intellectual property. And by utilizing this shared services model, they control their employees, and they feel in most instances that risk is significantly diminished by utilizing this model when it comes to regulatory compliance and control of intellectual property. Also, I mentioned before that with no markup on salaries, typically this model enjoys significantly lower operational costs. If we could move to the next slide, what I'd like to share with you is the fact that while it's absolutely necessary to have very attractive and a safe working environment in our facilities and to support our clients' workforce as best we can, make sure that they get paid on time and they have the appropriate benefits. Or if a computer system breaks down, we have staff that can address that issue immediately. But we really consider all of those as table stakes for a global services operation. You need to have all of that, but at the end of the day, it really is the workforce that is going to make a global services operation successful or not. So we put a tremendous amount of effort up front into interacting with the client and calibrating exactly what they need in terms of their hiring requirements. And once we spend that time up front and really understand the JDs, the job descriptions, and exactly the type of resource our clients are looking to hire, then we take the ball and run with it. And we go through our sourcing methodologies, screening. We screen all the candidates beforehand, and we select candidates and present them to our clients, who ultimately make the end hiring decision. And after that hiring decision is made and offers are extended, then we begin the onboarding process and prepare those candidates for their first day of work. We've been faced with a lot of challenges in order to implement some of these processes during Corona. We've developed several innovations that have proven really beneficial for our clients' continued growth. So to touch on some of those, we've utilized the CATS system, and this is a customized hiring workflow system used by the KMC recruiters to source, engage, manage, and submit candidates to our clients. Obviously, in the pandemic, there's not a lot of face-to-face interaction when we're in the midst of lockdowns. So we've very successfully used Zoom's platform for a lot of our internal meetings, our planning sessions with our clients, and most importantly, we conduct all of the virtual interviews between ourselves and the client with the candidates. We've used remote methodologies such as HelloSign to sign employment agreements and so forth. We've established a partnership with the Philippines' best digital bank for payroll implementation. And one of the things that I think has had a huge impact on our operations during the coronavirus is our onboarding system. We've partnered with a company, Onboarder, to customize a remote onboarding solution. And this solution is used to facilitate the candidate interacting with our internal KMC talent acquisition and HR teams, but also it allows our clients' hiring group to interact directly with that candidate. Surveys have shown that there's quite a dead time between an offer being made and a candidate's first day on the job. And by utilizing this cloud mobile phone-based system, our clients and our staff can interact constantly with the candidate and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. We implement quite a checklist for proper documentation, make sure that the equipment is ready for that first day on the job, and actually have some welcoming opportunities for that candidate to make them really feel part of the team. So these are some of the implementations that we've deployed throughout the corona pandemic to better support and interact our clients' hiring process. If we could move to the next slide. I'd like to finish up with a brief discussion on what type of talent that we've really addressed on behalf of our clients. And this pie chart really reflects the last 8 to 12 months hiring that we've done on behalf of our clients. And you can see there's quite a wide dispersion of needs within our client base. We have some clients that are IT support organizations in places like the US and Australia and Europe. And we hire staff that has tremendous background in IT support. And maybe that's the only service that that client is interested at the moment. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have large multinational corporations as clients that truly want to build a foreign operations center in the Philippines. So they may have needs for internal accounting and HR within their worldwide organization. But you can also see we have quite an emphasis over the year on financial and accounting services, healthcare and clinical. We've got clients who utilize US licensed nurses, physicians, and pharmacists, as well as customer service and tech support. So I think this gives you a little bit of a picture of who KMC is and what we do. Now I'm going to turn the session over to Tom Cragg, our VP of Revenue, who's located in Manila, and he's going to delve a little bit deeper into some of the things that we've implemented to make our clients more successful in their global services. Tom?
Thanks a lot, John. Nicely done, mate. Yeah, I just before we move off this slide, I mean, just incredible really to see that diversity in terms of the roles that we're hiring. I mean, I think we can both appreciate how far the Philippines has come, certainly over the 15 years that I've been here. And just talking about diversity, I was able to peruse the list of registrants that are joining us today, and it's amazing. I mean, this is truly a global webinar. I think I counted at least 4 if not 5 continents that people are actually joining this webinar today. So huge thanks to SSON and Zoom for partnering with us. Yeah, so John's done a great job in terms of explaining the KMC model, exactly who we are, what we do, and even going into some of the innovations that have really benefited our clients, particularly through this sort of challenging period. I'm on the ground here. I'm here in the Philippines, have been for 15 years, so very much my home. And I'll be talking a little bit more about some of the concepts that we've put in place around workforce distribution, or the Triple H model, as we like to call it. And I'll also be talking about a few partnerships, some crucial partnerships that we've put in place to really make that Triple H model pop, to really make it work. And whilst we're extremely proud of what we've been able to implement over the past 6 months, I want to set the scene a little bit. I mean, this, you know, we're very, very proud of it, but it's really been a collaboration, right? This entire process, KMC have always taken a hugely consultative and proactive approach with our clients. And a lot of the concepts that we've been able to develop, it's really a partnership. It's really, you know, getting some direction. We're lucky enough to work with some wonderful global brands, and you know, they've been able to bring in some or enhance these best practices that I'm going to talk to you about. So the first slide I wanted to go over, you know, this is a global study, but flexibility is now the ultimate perk. I think that's fair. I think wherever we are in the world, you know, having that choice of where we work every day is so crucial, more so now than ever. And actually 70% of people are considering that more important, a key factor rather, when they're evaluating different opportunities in terms of careers. What I find, I think that's probably always been the case in Manila to a certain degree, because the traffic congestion and the long commutes that employees have to take. But what is more staggering, 54% of individuals now would actually consider this flexibility more important than working for a big brand, for working for that logo. And the same percentage, even more important than an increase in holiday allowance. Well, I guess that makes sense, you know, with the quarantines and the lockdowns, where are you going to go, right? But, you know, for 32% to consider that flexibility above a prestigious role, I just find like flabbergasting. And, you know, this is a global study. Again, what more somewhere like Manila, with the challenges around public transportation as they are today. So at the moment, I think it's fair to say that just about everybody that we're speaking to is using maybe 1, 2, or a combination of two setups for their working environment. And you can see that from the next slide. We've got working from home. So I mentioned Triple H earlier. That's the home is the first H, reporting to the HQ. But what I think is important to just address on this webinar today, particularly for people that are logging in from outside the Philippines, is really to make sure that there's a sort of understanding of what the employees are up against. So yeah, number one, you know, the employees must have, you know, a work conducive environment. And, you know, where I grew up in the UK, when you turn 18, you know, your parents kick you out of the house and you fend for yourself. It's very different here. And it's not uncommon for, you know, multiple generations of Filipino families to be working to be living under one roof. And you can imagine the, you know, the distractions and the background noises, that kind of thing that comes along with that. And actually, you know, prior to the pandemic, I have to say, working from home was largely discouraged here in the Philippines for some of these reasons. Again, like, you know, in the Philippines, 4 out of 100 Filipinos have a fixed line connection in their home. So it just goes to show that, you know, it's not necessarily the same stability as other parts of the world. So these are definitely things that, you know, KMC has been able to come in and address, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And, you know, reporting to the HQ, it sounds so easy, right? But not as many Filipinos would have, you know, access to their own private vehicles. And what does that mean? Well, companies are really forced to either provide employee shuttles or provide housing for the employees near the office, walking distance. And of course, both these things really drive up the cost to operate. And what else drives up the cost? I mean, the hygiene and sanitization protocols that we need to enforce now to ensure that, you know, all of the employees have this very, very safe working environment, and social distancing. You know, you can't necessarily fit as many employees into the same into the same space. So again, all of this really, you know, drives up the costs to a certain degree. And as you can see on the next slide, this is where Triple H comes in. So John talked about the footprint, the geographical footprint of KMC, and unfortunately, as luck would have it, a significant amount of the investment has really been in expansion outside the typical CBD. So for those of you that are familiar with Manila, you know, it was always Makati, BGC, or Taguig, and Ortigas. And you can see a huge chunk of the KMC real estate is now outside those areas in more fringe locations. And what that's allowed us to do is add the H. So now we have hub and spoke. And what that allows us to do is really bring that office space nearer the employees. You know, less time commuting, less modes of transport. And I'll talk a little bit later about how we've been able to really map that out for our clients in terms of, you know, which employees should report to each location and things like that. So moving on to the next slide, this is our recommendation that, you know, companies use a combination of the HQ, hub and spoke, and home-based. So given all of the issues, you know, why do we still recommend that companies keep their HQ? I had a great conversation with one of my clients the other day. It was Maersk, obviously a lovely brand for us. And their manager was talking to me about something, and he came up with a comment, the office is where the magic happens. And I think we've all been a little bit guilty recently in terms of, you know, allowing certain innovation projects, you know, putting them on hold because we don't have the same collaboration that we had that I guess we took for granted when we were all just reporting to the office every day. Well, what else? I mean, yeah, it definitely solidifies your brand presence, not just branding to your clients, but also employer branding. I guess having a HQ really suggests stability. You know, you're not one of these fly-by-night companies. It's the center of information and storage of important data, where a business's integrity is formed, sure. But really, you know, that company culture and community that if we're not careful can go astray without the office space. But I think it's fair to say, you know, and I think we'd be naive to think that people will continue to use their HQ in the same way, which leads me on nicely to the next slide. So the building there that you saw pictured, that was one of our expansion projects for 2020. Sadly, it's been delayed by about 4 months by the pandemic. Obviously, less workers allowed on site, certain restrictions, obviously the lockdown itself and some of the stricter quarantine periods we've been through. But what that allowed us to do was really sort of pump the brakes a little bit and say, sit down with the design and projects team and really work on how we could reconfigure the space to make sure it was as safe as we could make it. And well, what does that mean? Well, you know, larger desks, so people are slightly more spaced out. We've got the workstation dividers, which kind of went out of fashion. Now they're coming back in, but not just in the production space, but even in some of the common areas. So, you know, if you're in the pantry, you're taking a cup of coffee, you even have some division between you and your neighbors. And what we've been able to do with Podium, this facility, and you can see from the renders how, you know, just how spacious it is and how many collaborative areas we have. We've been able to really reinvent the brand a little bit and make it a very, very, in fact, the most spacious workspace in terms of, you know, desks to square meter ratio or square feet ratio for some of you. As you can see on the next slide, so again, just again, talking about that first H, the HQ, but this is very much something that we've been able to deliver across the board, across 23 locations, 10 CBDs. You've got these protocols that we've really been, I think it's fair to say, thought leaders in our space here in the Philippines in terms of putting some of these things into place. So we've got the online health declaration. So it's something you can do on your phone before you leave the house to come into the office. And again, that's just really something to, first of all, allow you access to the building, but also really for us to do effective contact tracing in the event that there was any cases in our facilities. We've got touchless access now. So it used to be the fingerprint biometric access. Now it's all badge access and all touchless. So you're not constantly in contact with those high touch areas. The floor plan I talked a little bit about earlier, but these arrows you can see where it says social distancing. We have one-way traffic in our offices so that people aren't brushing up against each other in the corridors. We've even removed chairs. So we're really encouraging people to space themselves out a little bit more than they used to. One term you probably haven't heard before is nurseceptionist. This is not something that we've just put in place for the pandemic. We coined this phrase about 9 years ago. We've always been a huge believer in having a nurse on each site, and they double up as a receptionist. And that really allows us to, first of all, provide primary care, of course, but also give the best possible advice. And we've since been able to set up the KMC COVID hotline. So if anybody's a little bit unsure about their symptoms and what they can do, there's a number that they can dial. We've got hospital grade UV technology, which we're using twice a day. And I think another component where we've really led the charge is around, employee engagement, really particularly around health, fitness, well-being, nutrition, and how that can benefit you through this pandemic. Next slide, please. So that was the HQ. The second H, hub and spoke. So fairly obvious. I mean, the benefits with this model, less time in traffic, limits the exposure of our employees on public transportation, really providing the employees with consistency about how they work. They've still got that secure high-speed internet with multiple redundancies. I guess a little bit of Big Brother, if you like. We can keep an eye on the timekeeping attendance of the staff. But I think more importantly than anything else, it's really that interaction with other co-workers, which has been missing, in my opinion, the last few months. Now, how do we decide who's going to work where? And this is the deep dive consultancy that we've been working on with all of our clients. So we've been fortunate enough to get their anonymized residential addresses, and what that's allowed us to do is use geomapping software, put the addresses and overlay the KMC facilities, and we've been able to give really, really good guidance in terms of which employees should be reporting to each facility. So that's the level of detail that we've been able to go into. So I think that's probably enough on hub and spoke. The third and final H is home. What we have a home-based model now. We embraced this very, very early on. I think about a week into the pandemic, we were talking about CASA by KMC. So what is CASA? Well, this picture sums it up quite nicely. This is in an employee's home. You can see here they've got the laptop, of course. So we provide the IT and hardware. We provide the peripherals, noise cancelling headsets, additional monitor if required. We're working with local ISPs so that we can provide up to 50 Mbps of fiber optic internet. We've got the software that they need to do the job, Zoom, of course, which is very popular at the moment, as well as some productivity software on an ad hoc basis. But I think what's really crucial as well is the ergonomic furniture. I don't know how many calls I've made, the last few months, hunched over my coffee table or, heaven forbid, in bed lying down. And obviously, we're just trying to improve that experience and make sure that everybody's posture's looking good. And the benefits, again, relatively obvious, I guess. Zero work-related exposure to those to the virus. Job retention. We've heard stories about companies losing, tens and in some cases hundreds of staff, just resigning despite the volatility in the job market because they're being forced to come into an office. And what else? I mean, the talent pool. Historically, people would go to other parts of the Philippines, to tap into different talent pools. Well, now that we're embracing work from home, there's a whole new talent pool just from that of people, working mums and dads, etc. That have to be at home with the family. We can now tap into that labor pool as well without leaving Manila or leaving the CBD. And of course, this saves you immensely on the cost component of real estate. So next slide, please. And what ties this all together? Again, partnership I'm particularly proud of is one that we have with SWAT Mobility. So as you can see, this is an app that our employees have on their phone. It allows them to put in their address and, SWAT takes care of the rest. It does all of the route optimization. There's GPS so you can see how far the van is away and time your walk to the end of the street. And I think the best way I can describe SWAT is really like a technology solution, but it's essentially like a school bus for adults. So we've always run shuttles. We've always had, particularly in our fringe locations, we've had shuttles which take employees from the facility or the building lobby to the nearest MRT station or the nearest transportation depot. And now we're able to actually extend that service to the employee's home. And it's still fully under our control. So we use the app, we use the technology, but it's a KMC van, it's a KMC driver. They've been trained to take the temperature of the employees before they jump on the van, and make sure that everybody's socially distancing on the way in. And you can see here the original 50 pickup locations over the KMC sites. We now have over 2,000. So we're going from strength to strength, and I think it's fair to say our employees and clients are benefiting greatly from that. Next slide, please. So how does this setup help your business? You've got that flexibility. Employees can decide on a day-to-day basis whether they need to report in the HQ, one of our satellite locations based on convenience that day, or from their home using CASA. Wherever you are, you've got reliable internet connectivity. We're minimizing that risk of exposure to our employees. We're saving our clients money by maybe shrinking the HQ and availing some of these satellite locations in CASA. And in the event of a second wave or a spike here in Manila, it also ensures some business continuity since not everybody's working from the same place. But why? This will be my last slide, I promise, and then I'll hand over to Lara Teng. But why is now such a good time to either start or re-engineer your offshore model? Well, we saw the diversity of the roles we're hiring for. The Philippines upskill shift has been immense over the last decade in particular. It's not just the call center capital of the world. I guess it's a global impact, but particularly here in the Philippines, unemployment rates have increased. We now have a lot of very, very highly skilled and experienced resources that have been displaced through no fault of their own, that are readily available and hungry to work. There's the global trends, this growing trend in work from home. Does it matter anymore where your employees are located? And I think in terms of re-engineering the model, obviously, regulatory compliance has become a hot topic recently. And I think, bringing certain things in-house and utilizing the KMC model really allows our clients to do that. And the last, and I guess another very important reason, it's Q4, it's budget season. The global pandemic has put a huge pressure on companies to reduce costs, and the Philippines is definitely somewhere where we can do that. So thanks for hearing me out. I'll hand you over now to Lara Tang. Thanks, Lara.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so my turn. All right, okay, great. Thank you. So I'm Lara. I'm really honored to be with you guys here. And I really hope that, in the next just couple of minutes, you do learn something from what I'm sharing. Now, if you can see that says, will you build a global team running 24/5 operations offshore in a global pandemic? That was the crazy question that we had on my third day at Zoom. And my third day at Zoom happened to be, the first day of the community quarantine in Manila. And so that's quite a different question at that time. Now, it's a great goal to hire and do the operations at that time. It's amazing. It sounds crazy, but I would tell you it's really achievable. Okay. Now, a little on Zoom. So, I'm sure you know Zoom, right? We are in many different countries. We are an American company, and the plan really for the year was growth, right? We were going to grow internationally, and we knew that when we do that, we need a location that's going to enable our growth. And so Manila was a natural choice for us. It was going to be a 2-year plan. It was going to be hiring mixed roles, a lot of focus on the customer facing roles and the back office and the enabler roles. That was the whole plan. Well, why Manila? You heard a lot of why Manila, right? I'm not going to go through many of the details of why Manila, but maybe just to highlight 2 things. One is maybe the affinity to foreign cultures. So if you don't know the Philippine culture, the Philippine history, to simplify it, we've had many years of being with Spain, being with the US, being with Japan. And then, we were trading with our neighboring countries for so long. And so the Filipino culture became a mix of the East and the West. And so what that brings is English is a language which is really very good, but more than that, the culture is a mix, and it's so easy to blend these people. And it's really important when you're building a global team, because at the end of the day, you need to make sure that the people you hire are going to gel well with the current people that you have on the team. That's critical. And when you're in the middle of a pandemic like this, each week counts, right? So definitely you want that. And then maybe specific for Zoom, it was the culture. The Filipino culture is, very warm, very welcoming, very patient and very dedicated in their work, a very good team player. And so Zoom culture is all about delivering happiness. And so it was a perfect match, you would say, right? Now, how are we going to do this? On the next slide, right, you'll see how we intended to partner with KMC. You heard a lot about that from KMC. I guess what I wanted to stretch is really, the whole idea was, we were going to build an office, a Zoom office. It was going to be the office, right? It was going to be a showroom for our customers, right? We will show them the latest products that we have there. We're going to have Zoom rooms available. Now, for those who are not familiar, Zoom rooms are basically a digital setup. You just walk into a room, you may have your phone, you may have your tablet, and you walk in and you're just connected to your meeting. Now, it sounds easy, but it's such a great experience. So we are going to have that, and KMC is going to be managing that for us. People-wise, right, it's going to be staff leasing, which means in order for us to be quick, we need to make sure that we can partner with KMC. We can temporarily put the people with KMC, and then up until we're ready. And so that means we're going to leverage their core skills, which is basically recruitment and payroll. And then we could go ahead. Zoom at the end of the day still owned the selection. We still owned everything, the operations and how we want it. And that's exactly what we wanted, right? That, to have some flexibility, but be able to have, the control that we needed. And so it was perfect. It was a well laid out plan. And I think we all know what happened, right? COVID happened. And so the next challenge we had was, a lot of the unknowns, and I'm sure you know all of the things in there, so I'm not going to go through that. But maybe to highlight, one of the things we didn't know back at that time was the availability of resources, and I'm talking about IT equipment and bandwidth. So if you can imagine, we are in Manila. A lot of the companies have, some business continuity plan, but they didn't have a business continuity plan for like a month or more than that of people working from home. So when companies were trying to figure out, that they needed to quickly make sure that people have laptops and all that, well, we were also buying our laptops at that time. So if you can imagine, just trying to measure the, with the laptops that's been bought abroad, will they be shipped on time, or can we afford to buy here, and all that, right? The next part was, managing remote teams. If we bring them in, well, it's different when you know everybody and you say, hey, goodbye, we're going to work from home and I'll see you next time. That's different. When you're building a team like this, where, we hire by the hundreds and you have many people every week starting, and they all came with different cultures, different companies, and you need to gel them in like such a short time, it is a challenge, right? So we thought through that. And I guess on our end, a key enabler is, Zoom's vision. It was very clear. We were going to do this. We're going to operate. We're going to hire. It's going to be different. It's not going to be as per our original plan. But guess what? We have the product, right? I mean, we are Zoom. We have the product. And so it really made sense, right? It was almost like a no-brainer, even though it sounded crazy. And so at the end of that too, we have partnership from KMC. We knew that they were very flexible and they were with us all the way. And so that was easy for us. Now, I would say icing on the cake is the people. So hiring managers knew that it was a different time. It is still a different time. They would need to put in more hours to help us get into the right candidate quickly. The candidates themselves are very flexible. I tell you, the first few batch of our candidates, I was making an offer and I was telling them, sorry, I have no benefits to offer you yet. I promise in about a week you will receive like a benefit, but right now I'm making an offer. And they signed up, right? Because they know it was different. Well, it is still different times, right? But that's the type of people that we are working with. Now, so what did we do differently with all of that? Well, some of it, when you're doing things like this, it really involves a lot of planning and replanning and research. In this case, if you're familiar with the whole agile model, right, there, you have to replan and change depending on what you find. And so in most cases, what we saw was, well, we needed to make sure that our operations at the end of the day will still continue, right? We had to understand what expertise are available here, right? What's the strongest, at the time of the pandemic, where are they? They're not gonna apply to you. Nobody wants to leave the office at this time, right? Nobody would take that. So how do you find them? And then, what's the range of compensation where it will be enticing for somebody that's not even interested, but at the same time, it's sustainable because we're here for the long run. So these numbers need to work, right? The other thing is benefits. It has to be enticing at the time of the pandemic. So some simple things. I know it sounds simple to say, but for example, when you have a health and medical, plan, and you tell them, yeah, well, you're not going to get it until your third month because some offices here, it's very common. They don't give that on day one. Well, that's not going to work, right? They need to be having a plan right away. At the same time, we took a look at their leaves, their vacation, their sick leave benefits. If they get sick at any point, well, they can't be earning their sick leave. You have to give it to them right away. So small things like that we made sure are in place so they won't think twice, right? Those are the things that we took a look at. Now, processes, there's a lot of cut down on the typical recruitment processes, right? So I would say, from the usual process, we had to resequence a lot of the steps. So for example, even before we get to post the jobs, we're still writing the job description, and hiring managers are already helping comb social platforms to sort of look for the perfect candidate in their eyes. And we've been very creative in doing that. In some cases, we had to help paper screen because if you know, or I'm sure you know, the recruiters, by the time they call a candidate, they schedule a candidate and do all the interviews, they would have wasted maybe a good 3 hours on one person just to realize that they didn't even fit at the start. So we had to help with the screening. We developed exams that are given early on so that we could filter all that. From an org assessment, that was critical because, if you're building at this time, we need to know of people who are, who have a more or less the same mindset as we do, the can do it attitude. And those are things we did from the ground, right? I mean, it's different when you know the culture and you're the one sort of selecting, right? Other things that we did, aligning and realigning our stakeholders. With our hiring managers, we were very clear. We were going to hire senior, plug and play, right? On the first quarter, right after we hired them, we observed them for 2 months. Like in 2 months, we have to decide, okay, is this the right skill set? Is this the right competency? And what we found is we quickly added more roles than what's in our plan. So we ended up doubling all our original plan, and as we speak, I think we're now talking about making it triple. And so that tells you how much success that we're having, right? And then there is a 6-month probationary in the Philippines. Everybody you hire, you have about 6 months to sort of decide whether you want to keep them for or you want to keep them really. And now that's important because when you're hiring really quick, you can't help it if you're hiring in big numbers. There's about 1 to 2% where you may not have selected the right person, and you kind of want to cut your ties early on as well. So we made use of that. We didn't want to just hire for the sake of hiring, because at the end of the day, we were looking for people that are going to be a good add to Zoom, to make our customers happy and to our culture. And so we did a lot of that. We tested the market for niche talents. We lead a lot on employee referrals. What you find is when your employee are involved in building the team, that it's easier, because then there's more, like they have skin in the game. And on our end, to reward them, we sort of waited until the the 3rd month, the 4th month, to make sure that they're really giving us the right candidates as well. Now, in all those, they were all digital. You heard a lot about the technologies that John had shared earlier. Well, definitely it was 100% Zoom. Nobody went to the office to be interviewed. No candidates went there. It was ghost town, I would say, in the office. But really what that gave us is, when you're doing Zoom interviews, then you can check how their internet is. Without telling them, right away whether, if you hire this candidate, they can quickly turn around and join your team. If in the interview they were spotty, right away, they're gonna have to invest on internet. But we still enable them, right? We gave subsidies for internet connection, just to make sure that people invested on their internet and the experience is the same. It was paperless, right? No, everything is digital. All the contracts are all e-signatures, so we did all that. As John said, we made use of a very good onboarding application, because if you're hiring 15, 20 a week, then you need to make sure that where they are in the onboarding process, and they need to feel like they're welcome, that this is all planned out. Otherwise, they're gonna get scared, and who knows, they may leave, or they may not even arrive on day 1. And then I guess on our end, what's critical was the bring your own device. I talked to you earlier about the availability of the equipment. Like, everybody was buying laptop like crazy. And so to us, what we enabled is the whole security thing through bring your own device, where we had desktop as a service set up so that people can use their own laptop, because in some cases they were quarantined in locations where we couldn't bring the laptop to them, right? So we had to do that. And in a lot of this, after we hired everybody, we have to make sure that we norm, right? I mean, you don't just hire them, then they say, that's it, right? So we had to do all of that through Zoom again. Training, connecting, making it fun, making sure that they get enough face time with the people that they normally would work with if they were in the office. So all that, everything that I've shared with you, granted very quickly, is all that we've done in order to deliver our goals. Now, I know you heard a lot, but from a takeaway, I guess what I really wanted to say was, one, definitely Manila is a location that you should consider if you are thinking about expanding, or if you're thinking about an alternative place for your operations. don't let this pandemic stop you. Actually, what we're finding is, sadly, a lot of the companies are impacted by what's happening. So a lot of the talent are available. And these are good talent because we have, as I said, we have a lot of multinationals that came here and sort of trained them and contributed to that. So take advantage of that. And then I guess the third and most critical, if you intend to try it and go ahead with this, make sure that you have enough support on the ground. Because, hiring and doing all this 10,000 miles away may not be your ideal, your ideal setup at this time. And partnering with KMC will definitely help you with that one. So with that, I really wish you luck. And, with that, if there's anything else I can help you with, just, let me know. Okay, thank you.
And we do have a couple of questions that have come through. We do not have long, so I just want to shoot straight away into a couple of questions. The first one is that I'm going to do is from Jana, and Jana asks, how flexible are the models provided by KMC? Can they be used? Oh, it's got away. Sorry. Can they be used for flexible staffing? And flexible staffing models using regular seasonal additional capacities during peak times? And I'm going to direct that question to John, if that's okay.
Well, we have a lot of flexibility in our model in terms of what shift during the day is utilized. We've got during the hiring process, the interviewing process, we share with the candidates exactly what the client is looking to accomplish and what that may entail. Is it a 4-day work week at 10 hours a day? Is it a night shift, a mid shift? So there's we hire for that basis, and we offer tremendous flexibility in terms of that. It's a little bit more challenging. Seasonal work is a bit more challenging with our model. We try to address it, but most of the staff that we engage with are really looking for full-time permanent positions. So the seasonal work is a bit more challenging for us.
Yeah, it's not that we don't do it. We definitely do in certain cases. We've had some success around it. What we always recommend our clients is you'd probably get the best talent on a full-time employee basis. Now, that might change now that the pandemic has sort of upset the job market a little bit. So we might see some changes around that. But yeah, at least historically, the best employees were always looking for that full-time employment.
Okay, brilliant. And just in a very, very short answer, because we're really coming up to time, a question's come through from David. I'm going to direct this to Lara. And he says, what was your biggest challenge when moving offshore employees to a remote work capacity? And how did you overcome this? So what was the biggest challenge for you?
I think because you have to remember, these are all new people. Usually when you start a job in a new company, right, your mentors, everybody is beside you. Right. So when you're moving offshore in a remote work, I think, is that the question, or hang on, offshore, sorry about that. Okay, so we're moving offshore, right? It's they don't have their community beside them. And so it's quite different. And I guess, and at a time like this, you also have to think about the people who's supposed to be training on the other end, right? They're also undergoing some personal things on their own. So they're not also as focused as they would normally be. But that was a quick thing. Eventually what we found is they quickly ramp up, right? It's, we just needed to give them the expectations, and it was pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think clear communication and empathy is absolutely right. So that's really, really good to hear. Sadly, that's all we've got time for. So if you did ask a question, do not worry. I will submit it to the speakers and they will get back to you. So don't worry at all. So thank you so much for taking part in the webinar. Thank you so much to our speakers, John, Thomas and Lara, for taking the time to put together their presentations and deliver it today. We really appreciate it. Quite a few people have asked for the recording and for the slides. They both will be made available to you, so do not fear. And of course, you can reach out to John or to Thomas on LinkedIn to know more about KMC and what they do. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Very much, Sally.